Hello and welcome back to Behind the Desk, the podcast about my time working in a recording studio. As ever, my name is John, and today I want to talk about something outside of the studio, not related to Lofted anyway. So, a few months ago, I got a harmonica to try and play a song that I'm eventually going to record. Now, I tested recording this thing a few weeks back, and it was a pretty fun recording session, but it got me thinking, what is the best way to record a harmonica? Because it's a very rare instrument to record. It's like you're not going to record a harmonica on a regular basis. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Testing what is the best mic position for recording harmonica. But before I get started, if you have any questions about anything I mentioned today or any of my previous episodes, then you can find me at Wellesley Media on Facebook and Instagram. Now, with that out of the way, let me set the scene. So, there I was, sat down at my desk with a couple of things. A 24-key harmonica in C major, a Behringer Ultraviolet XM8500 dynamic mic, god that's a mouthful, a Samsung Q2U condenser microphone, a cup of tea, and a list. Oh yes, you heard me right, a list of a selection of ways I could position the microphone. You see, I wanted to test all these positions to try and find the best way to record a harmonica for when, I need to record one in the future. Now, I know I could just look it up, but I think it's a lot more fun to just try and figure this stuff out myself. And, I live in the middle of nowhere and the internet is very temperamental, we shall say. Now, I didn't want to go overboard with the tests, so I tried testing the following positions. I tried each microphone, the condenser and the dynamic, with the harmonica 3 inches, 6 inches and 10 inches away from the microphone. Then I tested on-axis and off-axis positions, and finally I tested recording with the mic at eye level, mouth level and neck level, all facing forward rather than being directed at the mouth. I did this for both the dynamic and the condenser microphones. Now, you might be thinking that's a lot of testing, and there is. There's 16 different tests to be exact, which some might consider overboard, but this does cover the basic positions of moving the microphone up and down, side to side, and forwards and backwards. I definitely could have done a lot more positions and variations of mic placement, but for my purposes, I think these would do. But it would still take a little bit of time to record, listen, and analyse each one. It actually took about an hour and a half to actually record it and listen to it all. So, I recorded something short and sweet to listen to and just to analyse. And if anybody has ever heard of the theme from Hanato's Village in Breath of the Wild, I played the first few phrases of that, something that wouldn't get too annoying to listen to. So, that was my planning for this test. I know, crazy, but we aren't done with the process yet. Because next, I recorded the Zelda tune into Reaper, the DAW I use at home, and there was nothing very exciting about this part, apart from a lot of swearing at myself for messing up several recordings. I'm sure that would be enjoyable to listen to for some, but like I said, other than that, nothing too exciting happened whilst recording. And once all that was done, it was time to actually analyse these recordings that I'd done. And I do have a little bit of practice at this. In fact, I did a whole module about analysing microphone positions at uni, except that was for a string quartet in a church, and there was a lot more in-depth microphone placements with space pairs and XY techniques in mid-side, which is a nightmare to set up correctly, might I add. So I think it's safe to say I know how to analyse the heck out of this harmonica ditty. And with that being said, let's actually talk about these recordings, starting with this dynamic microphone. Normally, I wouldn't choose to use a dynamic microphone for this kind of instrument, mainly because they are built to pick up more low-end frequencies, and they tend to pick up general sound rather than details within an instrument. So they are perfect for kick drums or recording bass cabs or anything with like a lower tone to it. Not so much with a harmonica, so I wasn't expecting great things from it. But you know what? After level matching the recordings, they weren't exactly terrible. Overall, I found the dynamic microphones and the dynamic recordings to be a lot more bassier sounding, which was to be expected, and generally they picked up a lot more breath, which I didn't expect. But that could be the result of my poor breathing and playing technique as well. I'm not a professional player, my main instrument is guitar, so that could be a justification as to why there's a lot of breath picked up. But on the whole, they weren't terrible recordings. Now, in terms of specific recordings to mention, I have to mention the recording at 6 inches on axis and the microphone at mouth level. Because I realised after recording these, they're all the same recording, the same mic technique and positioning. But what I found within these 3 recordings specifically was a couple of things. First of all, they were all pretty harsh sounding recordings. When a note was played, the transients of each one was really quite sharp and hard hitting, and it wasn't exactly piercing to listen to, but it did have a lot of honkiness to them. I know there should be a little bit of honk due to the nature of a harmonica, because that's how it sounds, but the mic picked up maybe a little too much of that honk, which was quite distracting and unpleasant to listen to. And I thought this would be the best position, purely based on it being a good starting point for many other instruments like vocals or, you know, any reed instrument, but not for this specific instrument, I guess. I found that with the dynamic microphone at least, my favourite recording was the recording where there was 10 inches between the harmonica and the microphone. And I preferred this one over the rest, mainly because it wasn't too harsh sounding like most of them, and it also had a bit more room to it as well, which I personally found helped the recording. I could add reverb if I was going to mix it properly, but without any processing, this 10-inch recording had a lot more natural sound to it, which I enjoyed. So if I had to record a harmonica with a dynamic microphone, I think I'd use this placement. However, that being said, none of these dynamic recordings compare to the condenser ones, because the harmonica itself has a lot of mid and high mid frequencies, and condenser microphones are excellent at picking up that range of sound. So hands down, I would use a condenser. I would have done anyway, but this test kind of proves my reasoning, because the recordings sound better, they have more clarity, and they have a lot less muddiness to them. But when I was using the condenser, I found a lot more background noise and unwanted details were found on these recordings. For example, on the eye level recording, I noticed I could hear a lot of air from the harmonica. My guess would be because the way the air flows through the keys and when it comes out of the instrument, a lot of breath and air is blown with a slight tilt to it, so it probably directs more towards where the microphone was. Maybe, I can't be too certain, but that would make sense as to why I got more of an airy recording compared to where I had the microphone positioned at neck level, for example, which happened to have a lot more breath and breathing noise. But saying that, the neck level recording did have a lot more clarity to it. It didn't sound as thin in comparison. And despite the breath actually picked up, I really liked the tone and quality of this recording. So if I had a better harmonica player, I think I would test the microphone at neck level. I would also use the microphone in an off-axis position as well. The main reason being that it reduces the harshness and honkiness of this instrument. And when the mic was off-axis, it instantly gave me this memory of just like a cowboy stuck in prison cells. It had like that exact sound and quality to it. The distinct playing of a harmonica in that sort of environment. So I feel like this position and placement is commonly used in movie and film sound production. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was the case. And finally, I would have had at least 10 inches between the microphone and the harmonica because, just like the dynamic recordings, it had a lot more room reverb. It didn't sound too harsh or abrasive, and it had a lot of clarity to the recording, which is basically what you strive for in any recording really. If your recording sounds clear and natural, then you've done a good job. And that's just a summary of what I learned from this harmonica test recordings. I tested dynamic and condenser mics, I tested different distances and heights, and found that off-axis condenser microphones with about 10 inches between the mic and the harmonica, and the mic at about neck level sounds pretty good. But that's just my personal preference. It'd be fun to do a bit of research and actually find out what is the right position, or what's the most commonly used position to record a harmonica, because like I said at the start, it's not a common instrument to actually record, so I don't think many people would know how to do it off the bat. You'd have an idea, but you wouldn't know the exact details. Anyway, if you have any questions about anything I've mentioned today, then please drop me a message at Wellesley Media. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. Happy to try and answer anything music related. All else left to say is thank you for listening to today's podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this analytical style episode. I've been John, and I'll see you all in the next one.